do you think, Milo? Huh? What do you think, buddy? What do you make of all this? What do you make of the world and how strange and unusual and ridiculous it is? Hello, everyone out there in the world. Good evening to you, Anemone. I hope you're doing well, Anemone. It sounds like you've been going through the ringer. Oh my goodness. I hope everything is working out. I hope you're having a soft landing. Command Genius, good to see you, bud. You're in earlier than usual, so good to see you, bud. I am exhausted. I'm tired. My dog, my little Milo dog, got me up at like 7 a.m. He's used to being over at the X's where she wakes up at 4 a.m. And so he's used to that kind of a thing. So I've been up since 7 a.m. for no reason. Well, not no reason. Get this little guy out so I can pee. Do you know how many teachers quit on the daily? I suspect the number is high. Right? We live in a culture of abandonment. Like that's the truth. That the culture is abandoning itself. And hey, Doom to Bloom, how you doing, bud? And I'm steadily just like coming to terms with the reality that 30% at least of the society is living in utter delusion about it. Just like completely delusional, like flat Earth level is where we're at now. And there's a subreddit. It's just starting, right? And it's a far right subreddit. I wouldn't go so far as to say that it's Nazi, but it's definitely like far right positions, right? We just need to flood the streets with cops. Like, it's from a Canadian perspective. It's a lot of like Ben Shapiro types. And I have been having like straight up genuine conversations with people that I can only describe as overwhelmingly and utterly delusional. Just literally like up is down, the sky is purple, like there's no and there is no breaking through. Right? In many ways it's somewhat liberating talking to people who have detached from reality so thoroughly. Like I literally have people giving me evidence that refutes their claims, saying that this refutes my claim. Like that's what's wild. Like they'll literally give me an article and the first 3 sentences will basically say the opposite of what they're saying. It's like we're living in a culture that has been taken over by dementia. It's wild right now. And it is seeming like it is universal. Like it seems like it's universal across the board. It just doesn't matter. So in this case, it's education, right? That what is obviously happening in education is that first of all, the system of education is structured to support the concept and the idea of capitalism in the first place. So it's a failure from the outset, right? Just literally just get cogs to go into a capitalist machine. It was designed during like an industrial period, and we have deindustrialized, right? And I think you're kind of nailing it, Grinning. And by the way, good to see you, Jade. Yeah, the religion of capitalism. You can't logic someone out of a religion they didn't logic themselves into. Yeah, that is what it is. It's what it's like, and it is that we are living in this period of hyper religion, right? That it is a death cult in the most literal form, and that we are dealing with like a hyper fundamentalist religion that is still, and the religion is still attempting to justify itself. Like that's the part about it, right? Is that the system has no economic basis. It has no material credibility left. It's not providing, like you're ending up with situations where you have like Tucker Carlson making a materialist argument to Ben Shapiro. Like that's how incredulous the system has become. That's how bereft of credibility the system has gotten. that right-wingers are starting to make a materialist analysis argument to far-right figures in a hope to sort of beseech to them, like, hey, can we maybe give up on this, like, hyper-fundamentalist religious death cult ideology and maybe, like, accept that reality persists and exists, and that we can't just look to this ideological idea. Like, we can't just fall back on a fundamentalist ideology. We actually do have to acknowledge that reality exists to some degree. And in the case of education, there's just no reasoning with someone to try to convince them that, like, hey, if you defund an education system, it's not going to be able to provide the education. And then you can't even get into the conversation of, like, the system of education that we have isn't exactly structured to educate people, right? That's not exactly its purpose, right? Like, the purpose of the education system is to just make compliant workers. Like, that, it really is just what it's for. It's that yes man go to the top. Anybody who thinks that what is happening should be questioned gets pushed out, right? Like, if you're a kid, and I was like this in high school, I wrote papers that were just like, why are we even reading this book? It's stupid. Like, those were the papers that I was turning in, right? And, like, the idea that we're supposed to read, like, Tess of the Dubervilles twice is just completely abhorrent to me. Like, what a waste of everyone's time. What a pointless endeavor. What a perfect way to convince people to hate reading and to hate learning and to hate any of this kind of stuff, which I'm more or less convinced was the point. Hey, that guy, how you doing, bud? Ligon to Z, good to see you. As a former Christian, I can say it wasn't logic that broke me out of those beliefs. It took a shit ton of pain. I grieve for what will happen to the true believers in capitalism. No, I genuinely think that the vast majority of the true believers will just go to their grave being like, those guys just need to work harder. I genuinely believe that is how this is going to go. Like, they're not going to have a big come to Jesus moment. They're not going to have a big, like, oh my God, I should have. Like, that's not what they're going to do. Like, they really are just going to be like, I worked hard and I was smart and I made all the right decisions, and those guys are just lazy, entitled, envious, right? And they're going to be like bitter old Cotton. A stellar entrance, as always. Like, someone like Ben Shapiro. Like, Shapiro's not going to have, like, a come-to-Jesus moment. Like, the water levels will come up, and, like, he'll be completely discredited as a thinker. But there'll be enough of them. Like, that's just it. There's just going to be enough of them looking at the world, being like, if only those lazy kids would just work harder. You know? That and they'll basically, like... And anytime the culture changes to such a degree that their ideas will be discredited, they'll just simply pretend as though that was always their position. Or maybe some of them, like, I could see Shapiro doing this, where he'll be like, oh, I'll just admit I'm wrong and that'll do it. I'll just put it on that page where I admitted I was wrong about having genocidal proclivity, and that'll be good, and people will still listen to me and take me seriously. Like, these guys have no credibility left, and the culture has no credibility left, and yet we are supposed to actually still follow their rules, still think that we should follow their laws, and still take what they have to say seriously. Like, it's wild. Like, it's wild to watch a culture destroy itself like this. And I mean, that's what we're here about. That's the whole point, right? We're here to discuss and sort of come to terms and have a catharsis and hopefully motivate and convince each other to fall into some kind of action, right? To take some kind of action, to move forward in some kind of capacity, to make sense of what's going on at the very least, right? Like, to make sense of what's going on at the very least. Because, like, I can't live in this state of denial and this delusional state of as if it's not real. Like, it's wild. It's wild. That guy celebrating third training session, did some cardio, back on track. Oh yeah, good for you, bud. Good for you. I was on track and doing weightlifting and doing all that stuff. Then I jacked up my elbow. I like really jacked up my elbow. Although I did some yoga today, so I'm pretty happy about that. But like, I can tell it's healing, like it is. But just like, I want to be ripped. I want to be strong. I want to be like a big man, right? But like, ow, my elbow, owie, ow. Apparently, you need your elbow to move your arm. Who knew? Who knew, guys? Who knew? So today is going to be big on climate change. I think I've got a lot of climate change stuff. But worth starting with some good news. More than 155,000 federal public servants on strike as of Wednesday. The parties made some progress at bargaining tables, but remained unable to settle on key issues, including job security, remote work language, and wages. This is the Public Service Alliance of Canada. It's the largest public service union in Canada. 155,000 workers on strike is a huge, massive deal. And even better than that, you've got Jagmeet Singh. Singh vows NDP won't back Liberal back-to-work laws during public sector strike. So this puts the government in a bind. This puts the Liberal government in a bind. And it is actually possible that Jagmeet Singh could walk out of this looking good. And that the NDP could actually walk out of this looking good and actually gain some support. We'll see. The populace is routinely convincing me that it is inept and not capable of understanding even the most basic stuff. And also, man with turban is scary. Ooh, big beard, scary. Scary big beard man turban. So, does welding a car frame count as exercise? I should say so. I suspect that you're doing all kinds of work when you're doing that. Radio Halifax, good to see you, bud. Did you hear about the black man eaten alive in prison by bedbugs? Dude, that sounds like the absolute worst. What are you talking about? Hold on, Isaac. Dude, what are you even talking about? What are you even talking about? First of all, I think that this story, the AI robot kills itself after 15 minutes of routine work, is overblown. I think it was just like a system. We're making a story out of that doesn't really exist. Hold on. No. I'm sure that the robot had a little, I'm sure it had a malfunction. I feel like we're manufacturing a story there. Hold on, dude. What are you talking about? Man eaten alive in prison by bedbugs. Sorry, Anemone, you're getting dethroned. Your robot shuts down story is getting dethroned. Sorry. Man found eaten by bedbugs in Atlanta jail. I mean, I'm with you, Anemone. I'm with you. That's why I think the story has gained traction, right? An Atlanta man died in a local jail after being eaten alive by bedbugs, alleges a lawyer. I mean, why? How did the guy die? Why was he left alone? What were the circumstances in which bedbugs could... He was incarcerated at the Fulton County Jail in Atlanta on a misdemeanor charge. They had placed Thompson in the facility's psychiatric unit after determining he had mental health issues. 3 months after he was... Dude. On the 13th of September, 2022, 3 months after his incarceration, he was discovered in a prison. I'm starting to understand how Jeffrey Epstein got killed, man. They just left him alone in a cell. Right? It was the bedbugs that got Epstein, you know. It was the bedbugs that got him. That's how they got him. Think about Yeah, they left him there, essentially. And they had a plan to take him to the medical observation, but the plan never happened, and they just found him dead. So, sounds to me like what happened to this poor gentleman was that they just put him in a cell and then just forgot about him. Sounds to me like that's what happened. Yeah, of course he was distressed. Brutal. Like, brutal. 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 Yeah, I don't think mental illness has no role in it. The only role it would have is people are just like, oh, well, he's mentally ill. We can just abandon him. No one will care. That's all. Right? Like, this is, yeah, neglect. Straight up neglect. Like, there's no other angle, right? There's no other angle. Anybody that stands up and tries to pretend like there's another angle or another take or there's another thing, right? I worked in funeral services for a year. There's literally no case to be made that a body so they're simply not checking up on this guy, right? There is no case to be made that a body should be eaten by bugs. There's just no case to be made. I have gone into units where people have been dead for weeks and they have not been eaten by bugs. Like, the idea, like, yeah, if he was filled with bed bugs to begin with, there should be a protocol to treat him before he's put into general population. Like, yeah. Like, it's not as though we don't have delousing. It's not as though we don't have the ability to do this kind of stuff. Like, we live in this crazy situation. I was saying it just the other day. I was saying it just, why aren't the mentally ill just bootstrapping wellness? Exactly, right? Look, the prisons are not being run. Like, that it's just the long and short of it. Like, there are no protocols. There is no system of governance inside of these prisons. Like, it's just like more and more evidence that you're seeing all the time. And this is how every system is beginning to look like. That, and in some cases not even beginning to look like. That we're pouring money into these facilities, we're pouring money into these systems, but the money isn't actually being used for the systems, right? So we're pouring money into the military-industrial complex. Well, the owners of the military-industrial complex just take that money, and they have no reason and they've got no strings attached. They don't need to produce anything, right? They don't need every so often, sure, they need to like produce a tank or something, but like people are just taking the money, and there is no audit, right? Like the military fails its audits. It's not capable of passing an audit, so people are just taking this money as far as anyone should be concerned. And the same story is in the prison industrial complex, and is in the healthcare system, and is in the education system. That they pour all this money in, and people just take the money. This is what's going on, and the jails, right? We have no reason to believe that the jails are not being run exactly the same way as the hospitals and the schools, which is that they are understaffed. There are no systems, right? You think about like how in the education system, you think about how kids are not learning how to write, and they're not under control, and they're being ungovernable, right? Well, imagine if those were prisoners, right? Imagine if those were prisoners. And I remember reading a Rolling Stones article that was talking about this very thing, where they were just like, yeah, the prisons have basically been taken over by the prisoners, and that the prisoners are basically just being left to organize and run these places by themselves. That the only kind of guard interaction is at the gate, where they just send the prisoner in and tell him, okay, go talk to this guy who's the gang leader, basically. And whenever we need to negotiate anything with the prisoners, we just negotiate with this guy. Like, oh yeah. Yeah, how did he pass through hundreds of layers of red tape without receiving any sort of care? Yeah, it's because it's slavery. And the reason why he's left in a room and abandoned is because he can't participate. Right? That's the mental health issue. Right? What's the mental health issue? Oh, he can't be a cog in a capitalist machine. And so they're just leaving him in a room and like abandoning him there. On a misdemeanor charge, no less. Like, why is he even there? Like, what's the point, even, of having him in there? Right? Here's your capitalist efficiency. Right? Here's your capitalist efficiency. Yeah, 3-strike policy, another slave policy, like another slave idea, right? Oh, we caught you with loose cigarettes 3 times, so 20 years prison. Slavery, like pretty black and white, pretty indefensible. Like the people who are defending this kind of stuff are just reprehensible people at this point. Just people who are like, fine, yeah, slavery is fine. Slavery is good, in fact. Like that this is where we're coming to as a people. Just straight up like Matt Walsh types being like, yeah, slavery is good. We should have more slavery, in fact. Yep, defund equals rise in crime equals more prisoners equals more slave labor. Yeah, so the cycle continues. Uh-oh, Command Genius wants to get into the COVID conversation. I don't like to say the COVID myth, but I will say the COVID narrative. That I find that the whole conversation surrounding COVID is itself a way to distract people from, I don't know, COVID's not fake. Like, if it was too big, it was too international a story. Yeah, COVID is in fact real. Like, don't get me wrong, Command Genius, and this is why I don't spend too much time on COVID, but I'll get into it for you because I understand your position. That I completely understand, and I'm very sympathetic to people who want to talk about how the pharmaceutical industry. Yeah, but your dad loves Mussolini, dude. Like your dad loves Mussolini. So, but in seriousness, I'm sympathetic to people who are like, look, the pharmaceutical company is taking advantage of us, and they're taking advantage of the situation to maximize their own profits. I'm sympathetic to that. I'm sympathetic to people who say that, the government is using this moment as a the government's using this moment to expand its own power and all that kind of stuff like that. I'm sympathetic to all of that, but to say outright that it is fake, like, you are getting into, like, yeah, you're getting into climate change denial territory. Like, you're getting into Holocaust denial territory with it. Like, the evidence is overwhelming. To me, the big tell, like the big thing that says, no, this is a real thing, is that there isn't a single nation on the planet. There isn't anyone who says, like, dude, if he's denying the Holocaust, like, it's over for your dad. Like, it's over. Like, I'm like, it's a hard thing to say, and it's a hard thing to accept, bud, but, like, I think it's just time to start saying, okay, boomer. Like, I think it really is just time to be like, okay, dad, like, whatever, dude. Like, I don't think that you can listen to this man. Like, I don't think that you can take this guy seriously. Yeah. So it's like it's apologetics is what it is, right? Like, it's oh, it was so overblown, and oh, it wasn't like that, right? You certainly weren't kicking in doors and rounding people up like communists and Jews and gypsies and Romani, right? It's not like we have the Nazis confessing to it. It's not like we have enormous amounts of evidence and eyewitness evidence. Like it's not like we have the Nazis confessing at the Hague or anything. Like so sticking on to the COVID thing, right? Like there is no nation that denies about COVID, and everybody was reacting to it, even nations that were at war with one another. Like so to say, yeah, like if it was fake, we'd have evidence similar to the evidence that we'd have of the 100 million dead or mouse famine, right? And like we, like we've got the bodies. Like I don't know what to tell you. Like we've got the bodies. We've got people dying of it. Yeah. It seems to me like we're just like I think about it and I compare a lot of this stuff like climate change denial. I've been having a lot of conversations with climate change denialists recently, and I've been very upfront with them. Right? Like what you're doing is akin to flat eartherism, right? And I have no problem saying that anymore. Like if you are denying the existence of climate change, that's the same as flat eartherism. And this COVID stuff, like this COVID is fake stuff, is basically just flat eartherism again. And it's no surprise to me that the same people who are walking around saying that COVID is fake also have like incredibly kooky ideas and theories. But I've been saying this about the flat earthers since I learned about them. Is that like, yeah, they are definitely a example of what happens when systems lose their credibility. You start to get lots of people acting in this conspiratorial way. And test. I don't know if I've ever seen you here before, bud. Test. Good to see you, though, in either case. Yeah, what about the gain of function research that was funded in the U.S. by Wuhan? Yeah, man, like, I'm sure that shit happened. Like, really. But here's the thing, test. And good to see you, Ernie. Test. I just don't care. Like, straight up. Like, I actually just don't care. Like, I don't think... I think you could spend your whole life researching this as, like, a journalist and trying to figure it out and trying to suss through and trying to break in and trying to make... Was it made in a lab? Did it happen naturally? The blah, and all that kind of stuff. You could spend your whole life doing that. I could have this whole channel, and my whole channel could be about this. And I could spend my whole life having conversations with people and sorting it out. And here's the evidence, and doing like the graph, like Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, that meme where he's like, I could do that, and you'd still end up with nothing. Because it's in my view, it comes down to how we responded to it. That's the thing that matters to me more. Like, should we have bioweapons labs? No, obviously. But should we have war? No, obviously. Right? So, like, I think that those are fine things to say, and those are fine positions to have, but I just don't care enough, because to me the response should be, well, how did we respond? Like, how did we respond to it? That's what's way more interesting to me, right? And we saw how the West responded. We know exactly how we're going to act when another crisis of that scale comes through, right? When another crisis of that scale comes through, we are just going to abandon huge sections of the populace. We might do the most tiniest possible, some kind of like, yeah, here's $100 in or even maybe 1,000. No. I didn't say it didn't matter. I just don't care. Like, that's the difference, test. Like, I'm not turning this channel into a COVID channel. Flat out. Like, like, I've got people in here who have their pet thing that they want to talk about. And if I find an article, I'll put it in the Discord, that kind of thing. And if you want to donate a dollar to my Discord, you can join the Discord. And when I find information about COVID, I'll put it on the Discord. But I'm genuinely not turning this channel into a, like, oh my God, COVID conspiracy channel. It's just not happening. Right? Because for me, what I care about is how we responded to it. And, like, again, should we have biological warfare factories? No. Like, no. That's my position. And basically, you're just going to be like, ever hear of this guy, like Dr. Wodo Basson, who uses biological agents on ANC fighters and miners due to wages. Like, I haven't heard of that. I suspect that's true. Another horror of capitalism. Okay. Like, yet another horror. Okay. You know? Like, however, things like COVID reporting isn't happening anymore. If they were just for profit pushing, well, because what's happening now is we've gotten into a period where, like, COVID is still happening, but now it's just everybody just deal with it, right? So it's just like school shooting, right? We just don't care anymore. We don't report on it. We don't talk about it. We don't. It's not a big crisis. You know, when a school gets shot up, it's just okay. Move on. Thoughts and prayers, right? Like, it's just another one of those. And so it's just yet another thing, right? And so the bottom line on it is the once again the culprit is capitalism, right? Once again we're looking at a system of for-profit capitalism that is profiteering from the suffering of the populace, and COVID is just another way that has happened, right? And that's true whether or not it's a natural phenomenon or whether or not it's a biological weapons factory, right? Like, I guess that's the reason why I don't care. Because to me, I look at it either way, and I'm like, okay, well, either way, right? If you proved to me beyond a shadow of a doubt that it came from that weapons lab, and it's from there, we've got a confession, right? We've got somebody literally standing in front of us saying, I worked on this. I'm a whistleblower. Here's the evidence. I've got documentation. I can show you the path. I even have video evidence. I've got it all laid out. I don't think my position would change very much, right? Like, we need to destroy the system of capital because it's the system of capital that's actually generating this shit. It's the system of capital that's like, this is your capitalist innovation. Yeah. No, I think that's right, test. Like, there's nothing, and so, yeah, vaccine, Van Rock Blackguard, that's funny, dude. Vanguard Blackrock. And, like, right. So I'm not going to push back on you, test, on any of that. It's just yet another capitalist horror, right? And it's just maybe it's me, right? Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm like so, like, cynical. I don't know what it is. Like, maybe I'm just so overwhelmed by it, or maybe I don't know what language to use to describe it. My lack of shock, my inability to be shocked anymore, right? My inability to be like, can you believe it? And I do feel like there's a lot of that in this COVID conversation. There's a lot of that in this COVID conversation where people come out and they're like, did you hear the thing about the COVID? Here's the thing about the COVID. And even if it's like the most horrific shit ever, like the shit that you're talking about, Test, sounds horrific, right? I just find myself looking at it and being like, yeah, well, what are you gonna do? You know, like, and maybe that's not the greatest take. Maybe that's not what people want. Maybe that's not sellable, right? Maybe that's not how you get a big fan base or whatever. But just like, it's my reaction. I just feel like it's, oh, yet another one. Like, yet another demonic horror. Like, it's like I am tasked to look at the Leviathan demon that is capitalism and point at it and be like, hey, you guys seeing this shit? And having, like, whole group. And I mean, why am I downplaying it though? Because I don't actually think it's that important. Like, I don't. I just don't. Like, do I think it's horrible? Yeah. But do I think it's like the thing that I should give a shit about? No. Like, no, I don't. And like maybe, but I'm just telling you guys what I feel, and I'm just telling you how I feel about it. It's just yet another, it's like I'm looking at this Leviathan and there's like 10 heads on the thing, and one of them is this, right? Like, one of them is this head, and you guys are pointing at that head, and you're like, holy shit, that head. And I'm going, yeah, okay. Like, that head. And so you guys want to focus in on that head. Like, okay, like, let's focus in on that head, and then we'll talk about that head. But if you cut that head off, 2 more show up. And so I just I just don't find myself drawn to being like, oh God, about it. Maybe it's just I don't have the energy for it, right? Like, and maybe that's what I should talk about. I just don't have the energy for it. Like, so you want me to also care about this? Like, you want me to also, like, you want me to care about climate change, you want me to care about the school shootings, you want me to care about the Ukrainian war, you want me to care about the Chinese war, you want me to care about nuclear bombardment, you want me to care about the labor struggles that are going on, the protest movement that's happening in France, you want me to care about all this, and then also you want me to give a shit about COVID? No, I gotta draw a line somewhere, man. Like, I do. I gotta draw a line somewhere. I can't care about everything. Like, I can't. Like, I genuinely can't. I just don't have the energy for it. And, like, I don't know, maybe I should. Like, maybe I should. Maybe I should be like, oh my God, COVID. There's yet another thing that could potentially wipe out all human life. Yet another thing that is possible to just spring up and completely wipe us out. I just think that, okay, it massively matters if it was man-made in a lab versus a wet market. But I disagree with that. And here is why. Because what matters truly in the conversation, what actually matters is our response to it. Like, if you want me to actually do the analysis and actually talk about this kind of thing, like, the man-made versus the natural, like, sounds like an interesting conversation to have, right? Sounds like an interesting conversation to have, but I would much rather focus on how our system responded to the outbreak. Because it's not like there aren't natural outbreaks, right? Like, SARS didn't come from a lab. There are going to be pandemics that are natural outbreaks. Not every outbreak is going to be made in a lab. That the made in a lab idea or concept is scary, and it has like this like movie narrative. Like, it's got like it's like a big, larger than life, like an underground conspiracy that I'm sure, like, and don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here, I'm not even going to deny anything. Like, we know that there are bioweapons labs. Like, that's just true. Like, we know that there are bioweapons labs. And the idea that these psychopaths are not doing gain of function, like, of course they are. They're psychopaths. Like, of course they are. Right? Like, I think where I'm coming from is, like, you don't really need to convince me. Right? Obviously they're doing this kind of shit. Like, okay, yet another reason for me to want to stop them. Like, and that's been my position the entire time. We should stop these psychopaths. These people are psychopaths. You don't need to convince me. Like, finding out that they're doing gain of function to make COVID and then gonna release COVID and all that kind of stuff, it's like yet another reason. You know? Doesn't make me want to stop them more. Doesn't motivate me further. Like, and maybe it motivates you. Like, so, okay. Phenomenal. It's just not the tipping point for me. And what I care about in that particular conversation is how our system responds to these things. because our system is a system of abandonment. And our system is a system that says when crisis happens, deal with it yourself, go get fucked, the strong will survive, and the rich get cheap assets, right? That maybe will send like $1,000 check. But that's it. Like, that's it. That's all that's going to happen. And for a lot of you, we'll just try to tax that back from you, right? So, like, and frankly, I just think that there are people who are doing a lot more work on the subject. Like, that's another thing. Like, I think if you really care about this issue, you can go listen to Russell Brand, right? He'll tell you all about it. Like, if Jimmy Dore does fine work on this, right? He'll tell you all about it. But, like, does this story convince me that we should be stopping capitalist psychopaths and overthrowing the system of capital? Like, does it convince me to do it more? No. Like, maybe if we managed to overthrow, like, maybe if we managed to have revolutionary forces and managed to actually get in there and manage to do this kind of stuff, would we want to try people for this kind of stuff? If we have the evidence, sure. But, like, yeah, I just don't know where to ground it. I think that's really what it is. Like, at the end of the day, the entire story just seems to be, oh my God, can you believe it? And my answer is, yep. Yes, I can. I just am not, like, I guess I'm just not surprised, and I'm not like, what am I supposed to do about this? Like, what am I supposed to do about this? What should I do about this? What's my big movement? What can I do? Even. And it's so much like the school shooting story. It's so much like these sorts of things where I'm just like, yeah, another one. That I would much rather just, like, I want to talk about how to kill the beast, to kill this monster. Like, and I think another reason why I struggle with this COVID narrative and why, like, I'm not that keen on turning this channel into, like, a COVID channel is that, like, I already struggle with people taking me seriously because of my position on Ukraine and because of my position on lots of things. That, like, the COVID narrative and the COVID, and it's going to take, like, a generation or two for people to settle on this story, right? Like, we're still talking about JFK, for Christ's sakes, right? We're gonna be talking about COVID and this COVID narrative for fucking generations, decades and decades and decades and decades. It's just not really where I want to hang my hat. Like, that's just the long and short of it. It's just not really where I want to hang my hat. Like, yet another capitalist horror. Great. Speaking of, and like, another part about it is, like, we don't really need to manufacture or make up or hyper focus on things that might happen when we've got things that are happening. Like, things that are definitely happening. Right? We don't need to live in a world of, like, oh my goodness, it's possible and potential that there's going to be an outbreak that comes from a lab, perhaps. When we've got, like, this actual thing that's seriously going on right in front of our faces, which is this massive climate change crisis that we're facing. Right? This massive climate change crisis that we're obviously facing. And to me, the thing that I'm just having conversations more and more now with people I can only describe as enormously hyper-deluded. Like, enormously hyper-deluded. Like, this is what everybody should be talking about right now, if you ask me. Like, we should be staging mass walkouts of literally everything. Like, no exceptions. Like, all your schools, your hospitals, manufacturing, everything. Like everything and everyone should simply be walking out of their establishments saying, do more about climate change. Like government buildings should be empty. No one should be able to do anything. We should all literally be standing in the streets because of this issue. And I don't know, man, like trying to connect it back to this COVID conversation that we're just having. Like we're not doing it about something that's so obvious and in our face about climate change. So I just can't care. I just can't. Like, we're not going to do anything about it. We don't give a fuck. Like, we don't give a fuck. That, like, I'm not here to turn the critique of capitalism into a form of entertainment porn. Like, I'm not here to, like, jerk off to our horror. Which that's what the whole conversation surrounding COVID feels like. It doesn't feel like it's genuinely there to motivate people to do anything. It feels like it's there for people to jerk off about how horrible we are. And to have like, it's like people want to watch horror porn. That's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like people are like, so we need to get together in a group and go to a place and do a thing, like organize and all of this kind of stuff. But CR Strivey for sure. Like, and again, like, you guys are going to say all this stuff to me and I'm going to be like, yeah. Like, I don't, anybody who wants to go off and spend their time on COVID and do that kind of stuff, God bless you. I don't hate anybody for doing it. And it's just not what I'm going to spend my time doing. Honestly. Like, I'm just not going to spend my time doing it. Like, we're not getting active and organizing on things that are like right in front of us. Like, we don't need to prove anything. That the people we're dealing with in this conversation are literally like flat earth delusionists at this point. And we still can't get any movement on it. So I'm just not going to put my energy behind a conversation that's like we can't stop conventional war. Like we don't have an anti-war movement. We don't have a conventional anti-war movement. And it just feels like a type of masturbation. Like, it really does. Like, it really does. Like, and C.R. Strivey to like kind of talk to this point where how can I trust any government initiative without public health, climate change, without thinking it's a guise to make the rich richer? Yeah. So we need to get rid of the system of capital itself, because you'll never be able to trust any of that kind of stuff until that happens. Right? Like, it's the system of capital is what is the trouble. That is the base of it all. And that'll be true no matter what. Like, that'll be true no matter what. Fiddle Ford's catalog. You know what? That's a good a request as I've ever heard. Ugh. Let's do it. I'm gonna do it on a capo 3, I think. Here we go. Oh, Milo. How you doing, bud? You're being a fat butt? You're being a fat butt? Got asked a question by my niece who's 5 years old. What's the world gonna be like when I'm grown? I looked up at the crimson smoke-filled sky. I said, what's the harm in telling one more lie? I said, everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat, and Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? The burning sun won't leave a paper trail. Why work so hard if it's too big to fail? And what's the point in feeding this machine if it won't make the world in our dreams where everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets? You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat, and Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know one day my maker I will meet, when death's sweet kiss comes and sweeps me off my feet. I hope by then we've learned a little more. I'd like this place to be better than before, where everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat, and Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat, and Antarctica is covered in ice. Antarctica is covered in Oh, thank you, Anemone. That's very kind of you to say. Fiddleford, we are facing re-proletarianization. The illusion is cracking, and it's as good as it is painful. That's kind of a beautiful sentiment. The real question, how many Johns fit on the end of a pin? Well, you better be careful with those sorts of statements, Jade. I have an ego too, you know. Thank you guys. I appreciate that. I do. I don't know, like, share, subscribe. I've got $1. Yeah, I got a Discord. I got a Patreon, for Christ's sakes. I don't know. Do a thing. Hit the bells. Hit the whistles. Send the thing. Clip it. Tell people. Spread the word. You know, when it comes to the COVID conversation, I remember reading an article on this stream. That was confirming the existence of Ukrainian biolabs. And that the Americans had biolabs. And I remember reading it, and I remember it hurt me. It caused me deep, deep, deep trauma. Really. And I don't think I've actually recovered from it. Like, sometimes I read articles out loud on this channel and I feel the dagger slide into my consciousness. It feels like a needle that slides into my brain and slides into my consciousness. And that one, I remember that article. That one, I don't bring it up with friends and family. I don't talk to people about it. I don't have conversations with people about it. Because it's too horrible for me. But I think every person does have their limit, and where they're willing to go, and where they're willing to tread, and where they're willing to forge ahead. And I just know that I don't think I can. I just don't. I've looked down the path and I don't care to walk it. Straight up. I just don't think I have it in me. And I don't see the value in it for myself and for others, because I feel like my commentary and my conclusions are going to be essentially the same as everything else, which is that we're doing it because we're stupid, because we're just curious little monkeys. We think we'll be able to control it. We think we'll be able to out-God God. No, I don't think it's going to work like that, CR Strifey. I know myself pretty well, dude. Like, I know myself pretty well. Like, I know where my traps are. I know where my madnesses lie. I know. And I take a look at that COVID story, and I take a look at it, and I just think to myself, I just know that I can't do it. Like, that's just the truth. And that's an unfortunate thing to have to admit. It's an unfortunate thing to have to say. But it's the truth. And I fundamentally want to be honest with people all the time. That I'm more than happy to comment on how we respond and how our systems are not in place and how our systems are managed and how the system of capital responds to these things. But like the concept of biological warfare, like besides the fact that it's deeply evil, right? Like just the very concept of it to begin with is like you can't pretend like you're anything but a demon if you are pursuing biological warfare. It's just not possible. There's no such thing as good biological warfare. You know? And so just the fact that we know that there are biological labs alone is enough for me to be like, oh, we're like the darkest, bleakest of evil. Okay. Like I don't need to go any farther. You know what I mean? I just don't care to go any farther. I've seen enough. And like the idea of using a bioweapon that's designed to go after ethnicities, which is on the table, that the idea that we're going to use bioweapons yeah, I see a lot of people crossing over left and right and acknowledging it's money and power that are the problem. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the hope, isn't it? Like, it can't continue this way, and it's not going to continue this way. It's not going to continue this way. That it will, like, the earth will sort us out. You know, the earth will sort us out. That we're going to be told what's what by forces that are way bigger than we are. Yeah, the Chicago kids, they definitely give me hope. Without a doubt. Like, the idea that, like, we were all just going to sit and do nothing while this was all happening is sort of wild to me. And like, to me, it's the senselessness, you know, in the COVID conversation. It's just this overwhelming senselessness. Like, why even make these things? What's the point? What's the goal here? What's the objective here? Like, what are you hoping to gain, even? What gain of function? Methane, that was 7. It was not 12 monkeys. Like, it truly is as though the ruling class have just decided to become demons. They've just decided to be this way. That we are going to pursue the evilest possible path. And, or perhaps it is just simply like we're doing it because we can. That there's no, so there's just basic, just monkey wants to curious George. Like, and it's, and I can feel it right now. Like, I feel it right now. You know, I just don't, it's bad enough that we're just ignoring climate change and that we're going forward with it. And that we're just plunging ourselves down into this, in this profit motive sort of a thing. Right? It's bad enough that we're spreading war around the world in this mad desire for money, this worship of money. Right? It's bad enough that we're doing all of that. But also now, by the way, hey, heads up, we think that we can create diseases that will do what we say, and that we'll be able to control them, and that we'll be able to maintain. Like, it's just insane. Like, it's just insane. Like too insane for me. Too far down the line for me. Like, I don't know. Like, the idea that there is anybody who is looking at this and signing off on it. The idea that there's somebody who's actually working in those labs. The idea that there's people who are actually making these and manufacturing these and working on these things. The idea that it's got international support. The idea, like, all of these things. Like, I think I need to keep that as an abstraction. Because I just can't accept it as a reality. Like, I just can't accept it as a reality in my consciousness and maintain any kind of semblance of regular sort of sanity. Like, we still need to live in the world. We still need to be able to have some kind of sense of happiness and some kind of sense of, like, I still want to be able to smile with my friends. You know what I mean? Like, I still want to be able to hang out with my friends and try to be fucking normal. You know? And I just know for a fact that that's not gonna happen. Like, it's just not gonna happen. If I'm going down this fucking COVID rabbit hole. Like, if I'm dealing with this COVID thing, if this becomes like a COVID channel, I just know it's not gonna happen. That it's gonna make me fucking miserable. Like, it's gonna make me fucking miserable. And so I'm not gonna do it. Like, I'm just not gonna do it. Because I don't want to be miserable. Like, I feel like I'm spreading, or acknowledging anyway, enough misery in the world. Like, and it doesn't help that there is a lot of conspiracy in the conversation. And it doesn't help that there's not a lot of concrete stuff. Like, it doesn't help that some of the people and it doesn't help that a lot of the people that I encounter that are throwing around this COVID narrative are also like, and you'll never believe who's in control, the Jews. It doesn't help, right? Like, I'm sympathetic to the COVID people, and I've said so. Like, I am sympathetic to it. But just like, I don't know, I think that the COVID people didn't do themselves very many favors. And like, I'll never forget, during COVID, the largest protest movement was an anti-lockdown protest movement here in the city of Toronto. And the central organizers just straight up were saying COVID didn't exist. And so it's been difficult for me to want to jump on board. And you go down there, and the people at the dead center of the march are carrying around a big giant wooden cross. And then if you talk to them, you realize pretty quickly they've never read the book. And they think that Jesus is a real thing and he's coming back at any moment. But that COVID's not real. So there just kind of comes a point where I'm just like, I just don't care to onboard it. Simple as that. I just don't care to onboard it. And maybe that'll make me, like, I think that someone like Russell Brand is essentially pursuing the story because that's where the money is. More or less. Like, I think that a lot of the commentators and a lot of the people who are talking about it is because there's a lot of interest around it. You know? It's interesting. But it's interesting in that kind of like horror porn sort of way. Right? I don't think it's interesting in a like I don't think it's motivating people. Like, are people actually organizing? Are people actually getting together? Is there like a COVID brigade? Is there some kind of thing? Like, I just don't think it's particularly motivating. Ah, well. Oh, well. I was just a little boy when my mom and dad divorced. Through my tantrums, cried my tears, I'd keep their vows by force. Now that I'm an older man, I see it has to be this way. My love for them, it keeps on growing each and every day. Time passed me by so swiftly, I could have been a better man. And every day I'm trying to do the best things that I can. And though they're not the people I expected they would be, well, I love them all the same. I just want them to be free. 10 years, me and my wife, we traveled round the globe. Sacred vows and shared regrets, they filled our lives with hope. Then one day she tells me that a man is not for her. Those 10 years are a memory now, but my love for her still stirs. Time passed me by so swiftly, I could have been a better man. And every day I'm trying to do the best things that I can. And though she's not the person I expected she would be, well, I love her all the same. I just want her to be free. My love had a little girl, a scrappy tomboy type. I watched her blossom like a flower, but she felt not quite right. Then one day she tells me she's a young man, not a girl. I picked her up and held her close, then sent my son into the world. And time passed me by so swiftly, I could have been a better man. And every day I'm trying to do the best things that I can. And though he's not the person I expected he would be, well, I love him all the same. I just want him to be free. And though they're not the people I expected they would be, well, I love them all the same. I just want them to be free. Thank you guys. I do appreciate it. I do appreciate it. Ah, man. Yeah, this COVID conversation, dude, it's got me. It's got me now. Because usually I'll say, right, I still believe, I'll always believe, that the earth is capable of healing itself. And a lot of what I've always come to think about humanity is that it's a sort of willful stupidity, but stupidity all the same. But this is beyond stupidity. Like, if I'm to believe that that's real and that it is actually happening that way, it's beyond stupidity. Like, that the people who are running the place are literally demons. Like, literally demons. Like, no different than demons. And if that's the case, then how does one maintain their sanity? Well, that's kind of you to say, Anemone. I appreciate it. I do appreciate it. I am trying. I am trying. You know? Like, we're all trying. We're all doing our best. I think that's right. Fitterford's catalog. I think that's right. Material dialectics helps. Getting your feet planted on the ground. Knowing what is or is not. In a serious way. Like, it's not an abstraction. Like, there is stuff. You can see it. You can put your finger on it. You can count it. And we know who owns the stuff. Yeah. I don't know that I would describe Marx as cathartic the first time I read it, but definitely I was like, oh yeah, this is it. Like, yeah, this is it. Like, he did it. Like, this is what makes sense. Yeah. And when I finally understood Capital after 5 rereads, it was even more so. Yeah. Like, 5 reads is a lot. Even if it was profitable to save humanity, would still destroy everything. Yeah, it's sort of odd, isn't it? Like, it's sort of odd that we're not, like, we are actually putting this idea of money ahead of, like, breathable air. Like, it's wild. I believe in you, that guy. Yes, I saw this. Midwest Marx is challenging Vosh to a debate. I won't listen. I can't handle another communist disavowing and minimizing social issues as just woke culture nonsense. It hurts too much. Yeah, I mean, that is going to happen. Like, Midwestern Marx, as much as I value his input in terms of his understanding of Marx, he doesn't really wade in to, like, trans rights issues, these sorts of things, right? That's not his wheelhouse. And but frankly, I feel as though him kind of blowing past that in a debate with someone like Vosh is ultimately going to be for the best. Because what Vosh wants to do is turn the debate into that. Because Vosh isn't capable of having a debate on material dialectics or anything. And if Vosh is an idiot, like I think he'll get absolutely eaten alive by Eddie. Like if the two actually talk, like I think Eddie's going to destroy him, and it's not going to be close. Because Eddie knows what he's talking about, and Vosh doesn't. Pretty straightforwardly. Like, I literally think the only reason Vosh has a platform is because he was one of the first voices on the platform as it began. And then also he's got FBI backing. So you put those two things together, like, I just think that the guy, like, probably half of his base is probably bots. Anytime he ends up talking to anybody who's credible, he ends up walking away looking like a fucking weirdo. Right? Like, that's his number one problem. Is that if you start putting him up against, like, I've seen it, where he had a conversation with, like, Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball on the Hill. Right? Like, and he looked like a fucking weirdo. Like, he just looked like a creepy weirdo. Because he is a creepy weirdo. And Eddie is going to be walked right into the human rights argument. Yeah, it's going to happen right away. 100 million dead Vuvula iPhone. It's the first thing that Vosh is going to talk about. Like, it's because it's all they've got left. Like, it literally, it's all they've got left. And the strategy is to just constantly put communists on the defensive so that they can't actually express the position. Like, that's the whole strategy. Right? Like, make sure that the positions of communism can never be said aloud. Make sure the working class and working people never actually hear the ideas of communism. Always keep communists defending the Holodomor, Mao's 100 million dead. Like, just always do that. That's why I actually really respect Richard Wolff. Because Wolff basically just walks past it. Anytime it happens to him, he's just literally like, I don't understand this. Like, what's this conversation about? Like, you want to play this game? Okay. And he just blows their position up because it's not a good position for the capitalists. Like, it really isn't. Like, oh, you want to talk about the Holodomor? Oh, okay. How about the Bengali famine? Or what happened in India? Like, and of course the capitalists can't defend themselves because they're illiterate, clueless boobs in the first place. They don't know anything about the subject in the first place. And if they did, they'd know what they were talking about, but they don't. And so you just end up spending your time, lecturing these guys. Like when Richard Wolff talked to Destiny, you just ended up lecturing him. It was kind of a boring, like, it wasn't a debate. It was just kind of boring, frankly. They're calling out left-wingers who aren't as well read with the purity fetish. I just bought the book, haven't read it yet. I actually watched a video with Vosh in it for the first time yesterday, and I was like, yeah, nope, and clicked off. Yeah, like he's a creepy weirdo who I don't think actually has much interesting things to say. Yeah, the world is capitalist. Every unnecessary death is attributable to capitalism. Well, for God's sakes, like the wars. Like, this is what's so weird about these capitalists. They want to talk about a famine. Like, they want to talk about, like, they want to talk about famines. It's always famines. Okay, but how about World War II? How about World War I? Like, how about the invasion of the Middle East? How about the Vietnam War? Like, how about all of these wars? How about the nuclear bombardment of Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Like, this is the game you want to play? It's a bad game. You lose. Like, I'm not even going to bother. Like, this is literally what I would be saying to these guys. Like, if I was debating Vosh, which wouldn't be a debate, but, like, if I was debating Vosh and he brought this stuff up, I'd be like, what do you, like, you think you win this conversation? Like, oh, okay. Like, I'm not even going to talk to you about these things. Like, if you want to compare body count, okay, let's start around the time that that the Russian Revolution happens. Okay, so capitalism's responsible for World War One, World War Two, the complete and total destruction of India, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, the Afghanistan War, the Iraq War, like, on and on you can go. Why do you think this is a credible position to take? You think stacking bodies is a winning strategy for you? Like, that's how bad and poorly read you are, that you actually think that this is going to one-up the conversation somehow? But my contention is that well-spoken communists refuse to engage with the human rights thing. And I hear it, and I look at my wife and realize that not even the communists have our back. I mean, part of the problem is that because this, like, what communists will say, and what I have said, it's not that we don't have the back of trans people. It's not like we don't have the back of the LGBTQ community. It's just, when do we actually talk about workers' rights issues? Like, that's what I continuously find myself saying. That funneling all of our energy into the human rights conversation, it seems as though what has been said, what needs to have been said, has been said. So when do we actually have the conversation about the system of wage slavery that we live under? Like, why is that not a human rights issue? Like, why are we not discussing that we have owners and that we are owned? Like, why must I continuously, over and over and over again, speak for hours on end verbosely about this one specific thing? Like, and I understand that it's concerning, and it is a concern for people out in the world, for sure. But, like, neoliberals, people like Vosh, their entire strategy is to just continuously have this conversation, to make sure that you can never actually have a conversation about workers' rights. Like, why are workers not human? Like, why are workers not part of the human rights conversation? Why is it that we're constantly in this position where we, and at the end of the conversation, the neoliberal position basically is, yeah, we want it to be totally cool to have a gay black woman pull the fighter jet's trigger. Like, that seems to be the conversation. That we really want it to be so that a gay black woman can own slaves. Like, that really seems to be the center of the conversation. And I'm sitting here being like, hey, how about we discuss the system of slavery itself? Hey, how about we discuss the merits of war itself? Hey, how about we discuss how weird the system of ownership is? The synthesis of human rights is this: take care of your own and reckon with the fact that the Western military does not save the minority communities abroad. Yeah, that is the synthesis. Yeah, I would agree with that. There is no pride in genocide. Well, and I also think that it's a complete backfire. Like, if your goal as a member of the LGBTQ community is to make it so that homosexuality and trans issues and all this kind of stuff, LGBT issues, are spread and are accepted throughout the world, then allowing the empire to adopt those principles is a complete disaster. It's a complete and total disaster. That what you are doing by allowing your military to attach pride flags to their ships, to their missiles, and allowing LGBTQ people to go around and murder children in the name of an American empire, is you're convincing the people of those nations that it is not okay to be gay. That is what you're doing. that when fighter jets come and murder your family, and you hear from the empire this pride flag waving, it's okay to be gay sort of speech, you end up thinking to yourself, no, it's not. It's not okay to be gay. And so any LGBTQ plus idea or movement that wants to spread itself into the world successfully must be explicitly anti-war. Explicitly anti-war. As point one. Because if it isn't, it will backfire. It will backfire badly. And it is backfiring badly. That the rest of the world is not having a big gay moment. The rest of the world is not having a big pride parade moment. The rest of the world is not saying, let's let people be gay and let's spread these things like that. They are not doing it, and it is because the people who are saying it's okay to be gay are murdering their children. Yeah, the suffering of black Americans didn't go away after the Civil Rights Act passed. Yeah, LGBTQ plus will never be released from their shackles thanks to capitalism. Yeah. Absolutely. Like, absolutely. Thank you, Broccoli. And this is what I think is so funny about this whole, like the whole conversation surrounding like trans rights and gay rights and women's rights and all of these kinds of things. Like, they just seem to think like it's not going to backfire badly. That they genuinely seem to think that allying with the empire is where the success will be, and it won't. Like, it won't. The rest of the world is not going to accept those terms. And that the movement needs to come to our position. The movement needs to come to the communists. The movement needs to say, we need to be anti-war. We need to be anti-capitalism. We need to be against the empire. We need to be speaking with a voice of class consciousness. Or we will be rejected by the rest of the world. Fiddleford says, teachers and mechanics are entirely necessary parts of our economies, both while playing different roles, are in similar situations. Yeah, that's the working class. Revolutionary blackout on YouTube is a cool getup. Took a lot of philosophy courses. Marx is a huge part. Do we have any modern theories to incorporate technology, though? Yeah, I mean, I have thoughts. Like, the workers should own the robots. We should just set up like a guild, essentially, or a crown corporation if you're here in Canada that just owns the robots, and the robots are essentially leased out, and the benefits of the productivity of the labor that the robots produce is just spread into the populace. That the populace just has access to it. Like it's a, like, that has the potential to put us into a dystopic place more than anything else. The idea that robots are going to be doing everything and we're just going to all be thrown into the streets, essentially. Like, I just don't see how we get through this. Worker management owned, capital funded is what I can see. I mean, get rid of the capitalists. I genuinely don't understand what the point of the capitalists is. Like, and I don't know why we're supposed to talk as though they have a valid reason to be part of the system. Like who gives a shit about these capitalists? Who cares about them at all? Like, at all. Like, they're obviously worthless. Like, the capital funding, like, we're so fucking caught up in this idea that money actually matters or means anything. Like, that's what's so fucking wild to me. Is that we're actually sitting here thinking like, oh, billionaires have all this money and we just need to tax the money away, and then none of that fucking matters. We literally, like, you literally could just like delete your money supply and then redistribute your money supply. Like, you literally could do that. There's nothing stopping you from it. You could just tell the Bank of Canada, yeah, just all of the money that's in the economy right now is no longer valid money. We're going to distribute new bills to the populace. That's the money. Like, you could do this. People would cry about it for a minute, obviously, because that's what we do. And then it'd be fine. Because at the end of the day, the money doesn't matter. We invented it. We created it. It's a little game. It's a little tool that we made. But it doesn't actually mean anything. Like, if the money went away, food would still grow. If the money went away, the rivers would still run. If the money went away, the rain would still fall. If the money went away, you could still put seed in the ground. Like, we're in this sort of madness where everything needs to circle around, well, what about the money? It's worship. It's worship. We're worshiping money. Like, if you want to use money, fine. But use it for what it is, which is a little tool that we've invented. It's not an icon or a god. It's not worth sacrificing anything, literally anything. That if you have the choice between burning the money supply or growing a single stalk of grain, choose the grain. Like, it's money is nothing, and it's destroying us over it because we're sacrificing everything that matters to it. And like, why? Like, why? It's so fucking ass backwards to me. Like, our economy is fucking backwards. Completely upside down and inverted. And we are actually willing to ship out our manufacturing base for it. Which is wild. Which is absolutely fucking wild. And what's so crazy is that anytime we get talking about things that are going around the world, and anytime I see anybody doing any kind of analysis about what's going on in the world, it's always on this idea of like, well, their money dollars are not doing so well. They don't have a lot of money dollars that they invented in the first place. Oh yeah, the yuan is not big. The dollar is big. It's like, okay, but who makes all the stuff? Like, who makes all the fucking stuff? Worrying about the graces of the willingness of capitalists to collaborate is like trying to beseech a king to help build democracy. Yeah. Like, I don't know why we think that we can negotiate with these people. Like, that's the whole position. Like, it's the position of the social democrat to say that we should negotiate. Right? Hey, Conrad, how you doing, bud? Yep. Deserts are being turned into arable land in Saudi Arabia. China's doing the same. Right? They're doing it by planting trees. They're dedicating themselves to it. It's a project. It's a major project that they're endeavoring on. And like, We should not be asking the capitalist class for permission for anything. Like, I think probably the biggest trick that the capitalists managed to pull was when they said they were the job creators, and anybody took that seriously. Like, how to tell you're a heavily propagandized people, how to tell that you live in like this hyper delusional space, is that some billionaire cocksucker who is worthless, worse than worthless, worse than worthless, tells you that they're the job creator, and you go, "Oh yeah, that makes sense," as if it actually makes sense. But it's not really what China's doing, though. That's the thing. Like, China has permitted capital and capitalists in their system, but there's a real like the buck stops here attitude in China about it. Like, people understand that capitalism getting involved in the political system is corruption. Like, they don't call it lobbying and give it like a little cute name and make it so it's like, oh yeah, you can give $100 million to whoever you want, and that's normal. That's just lobbying. No, they have a very clear understanding that it's called corruption. They consider it corruption. If you take money from capitalists, it's called a bribe. You can face serious punishment, and people have. And the goal of the modern communists in China is to steadily be rid of these guys. Is to steadily just and the strategy seems really it actually seems it actually seems funny. Like, to address your point here, Tinker. Like, it seems like the Chinese strategy for dealing with the billionaire class, outside of like execute them when they break crimes, obviously, which they have done and still do, is to simply wait for capitalist enterprises to collapse, because that's what capitalist enterprises do. They eventually collapse under their own weight and their own internal contradictions, and then take them over. That seems to be the strategy that the communists are actually doing, right? That they have allowed the capitalists in to transfer the means of production into the borders of China, right? Like, the Chinese communists didn't need to seize the means of production. They were given it. They just had to invite. It's not, no. China's not playing 4D chess. China's just playing like checkers or Go, if you like, right? Like, China's just playing a game. Like how can I put this properly? China is playing a game that exists above the game that the capitalists play. Like, the game that capitalists play is so take somebody like Elon Musk, or take somebody like all of them. It doesn't matter. Pick your favorite, right? Who's your favorite billionaire? Pick it. And the game that capitalists play is, how do I make my empire the best? So Bill Gates cares about the Gates Foundation. And if he looks outside the Gates Foundation at what's going on, it's only so that he can acquire more for himself. And Musk does the same. And so they're only focused on their own game. They're only focused on their own pieces. If they look out into the world, it's only to acquire more for their own little empire. And the game that China is playing goes above that and sees these capitalists as pieces in the game that China is playing. That's the difference. That Elon Musk's entire existence, Elon Musk's entire game is a single piece in the game that the communists are playing in China. And it's not 4D chess. It's just that the Chinese are looking at the whole board. That while the capitalists in the West are building individual pieces, because they're individualizing their individualism to individualize their individualism, the Chinese are going, no, this is a game board. There's a whole game here. So it's not that the Chinese are playing 4D chess, it's that they're playing chess, while the capitalists are cosplaying as a knight, or cosplaying as a bishop. Like that's the difference. How long do you think Xi will live? What who can say? What happens to Xi after Xi to the CCP? Chances are good that there will be a power struggle between the Xi Jinping faction and a rising faction within the Communist Party, as is always the case, right? That's what happened between Mao and Deng. That's what happened between, although it was a bit different between Deng and Xi Jinping, because there was a couple of leaders. What I expect to see happen is that there will be a couple of leaders who rule by consensus, because like the real truth about how the National People's Congress is organized. Like, Xi Jinping's not a dictator king. He doesn't point at things and say, do this, right? He doesn't rule by whim. That the National People's Congress is actually ruled by consensus. And the leaders right before Xi Jinping, I forget their name offhand, but they were well regarded by the Communist Party and by the people of China for being people who ruled by consensus. That they more or less just went along with what the National People's Congress wanted and enacted the vision that Deng had laid out and just continued that journey. And didn't really deviate from it. And Xi Jinping more or less does the same. Like, that's why there's not really many high-level controversies. Because for the most part, they're all getting into a room with one another, discussing what to do, coming to an agreement, putting forward a plan, and then enacting that plan. And so they put on the table, and they say, this is what we're going to do, and then they do what they say they're going to do. And the only reason, if you ask me, why Xi Jinping has stayed in power for this third term is because he's getting China ready for war, and the Chinese know it. And so they don't want to have a political struggle while they're marching towards a war with America. But what would happen after Xi Jinping? But let's say Xi Jinping dies now, right? Dies, right? Completely possible. Well, then the National People's Congress would convene. They would hold an election internally, and they would elect a new leader. Chances are very good that that leader would come from Xi Jinping's own faction within the Communist Party, and chances are very good that that leader would lead by consensus. That he's not gonna stand up like Khrushchev did and say Xi Jinping was a terrible leader and did so many crimes and we need to get away from this era. And he's like, none of that's gonna happen, right? None of that's gonna happen. Like, he's going to stand up and say Xi Jinping was a great leader and led us through times. We need to honor his legacy and continue the vision that he had laid out before us. That's exactly what he's going to say. And how do I know? Because that's what the last leader did, and that's what the last leader did, and that's what the last leader did, and the leader before him. All the way fucking back to Mao. That the big conflict that existed in the Communist Party internally was between Mao and Deng, with the Gang of Four and all of this kind of stuff. But since then, it's basically been just ruling by consensus the entire time with very little deviation. Like, which isn't to say there aren't internal fights and there aren't internal struggles, but I mean, proof's in the pudding. It's working. It's obviously working. You got to be a real dunder to think it's not working. And to speak to your point here, Conrad, right? China seems more like a capitalist country. I mean, that's just because you're convinced that communism is supposed to be poor. And look, what China did and what China has done is they took advantage of of America's worship of money, worship of finance capital. What we call openly in the society constantly the profit motive. That Marxism is all about having the means of production. That's what's important. It's not important to have little pieces of paper you invented and printed. It's not important to have a big pile of money and be a billionaire. That's not what's important. What's important is who has control over the means of production. That's what's important. And the Chinese know this. They understand this. And Deng was looking at these Westerners, and the Westerners were saying to them, hey, we want to move our production facilities into China so that we can take advantage of your low wages, and that will give us more money dollars, more paper money. And Deng looks back at them and goes, so we get the means of production without seizing them. You're going to give them to us. You're going to ship them to us, and we'll have them. You're going to erect factories. You're going to show us how to operate the factories. You're going to allow us to train an entire generation of people in how to operate these factories. You're going to give us access to all of this technology. You're going to give us access to modern technology. You're going to show us how to use it. You're going to show us how to disassemble it. You're even going to say in the agreement that we get to replicate it for ourselves if we so choose. That was part of the agreement. So we get the factories, we get all of this, we get to build what we want, we get control of it without seizing it, without fighting a war, and in exchange you get pieces of paper that you print in the first place. Deal. And the Maoists were against it because the Maoists saw the threat. Right? And it was a threat. Like, I'm not downplaying that. Like, I'm not upset with the Maoists. I'm never going to sit here and be like, the Maoists were stupid. And no, I understand why they were threatened and why they, but at the end of the day, the Dengists had faith in the institution of the National People's Congress. They had faith that it would be able to keep the capitalists from infecting it, that they saw the capitalists as foreigners seeking to overthrow us and infect us, and we need to keep them out of it. And they've achieved that. And you think about the journey that Xi Jinping has taken. Xi Jinping's own father was purged. Like, something to think about. The Communist Party of China purged Xi Jinping's own father from the society. That Xi Jinping wasn't permitted into the Communist Party of China. He applied something like 8 times until finally they allowed him in. And he's proven himself every step of the way to become the leader of the country. It's actually an astounding story. It's actually an astounding story. To go from being the son of a disgraced business owner who got purged under Mao to being the leader of the country. It's an incredible story. And by any account that anyone can see, he has been keeping the capitalists out of the conversation. Like, the capitalists don't own people. They don't own people the way that our politicians are bought and owned. It's just not the same fucking thing. And to me, I think the biggest difference is that even the Chinese capitalists, like even the billionaire class of China, understands that stuff is what matters. Like things, infrastructure, objects, things that are real in the world and tangible that you can hold. That's what actually matters. Food comes out of the ground. Feed the populace. Shelter for the populace. These are the things that actually matter, not the little pieces of fucking paper. Like, sure, that gives you a degree of power, but only insofar as it can move these objects about. Right? Because that's what actually fucking matters. And we don't seem to understand this. Like, we don't seem to understand this. That what China's strategy is, moving forward from this point, is to simply allow the capitalist structures to collapse under their own weight, as capitalist structures are wont to do. That when they do, you incarcerate and try those who have committed crimes, as they have done before, and then you take their assets and use them. It's exactly what the Chinese did when they had their housing crisis. Like, China had a similar housing crisis to the 2008 financial collapse that happened in America. The difference was that when it happened in America, we bailed them out. In China, they hung them. They hung the billionaires that were responsible for it. They took the buildings and they put people in them. Like, that's the difference. They are playing capitalism well to fuel the revolution. I mean, they're just taking advantage of the illiteracy of America, right? Like America doesn't critique itself. It's literally walking around being like, we're the greatest country in the world. We've got the greatest system. We're the best. Marx is evil, and anybody that listens to Marx is a stupid, evil bastard. And like, so no one has an ounce of criticism of the system of capital. They're all just moving forward with like, we're the best, we're the best, we're the best. Forgetting that like the wealth and power that they have, they've gotten from just shooting people and stealing their shit. And eventually you just can't do it. You just can't do it. I don't know the full amount of this story, Command Genius. Modern day China sent weapons to apartheid South Africa. I don't know enough about that story to comment on it. Like, I think that China is worth critiquing, but these critiques need to be routed in something serious and something tangible and something real. China is not without its faults. Muslim xenophobia is pretty bad there. Is it? What makes you say that, Fiddleford? But that's at least the least impressive thing. Oh, you got it. It sounds like coders are jerking themselves off. Yeah, AI. Yeah, all the communist propaganda. So let me ask you, John, how many spies do you think the West has in the CCP and their elite children who studied and were recruited in Western universities? So we've already heard the CIA complaining about how difficult it is to get spies into the inner circle in the CCP. It's actually a big problem for intelligence agencies throughout the West. Is that they're very open about it. They're all communicating with one another about how difficult it is to actually get intel about the internal workings of the and the plan. Because the Communist Party, like, the West is very stupid. The West will stand up and say, this is our plan. We're putting all of our objectives in this direction, and we are doing this. Here's how we'll defeat China. Listen, everyone. We here at the Rand Corporation believe that it is important for us to think through the unthinkable. Thinking through the unthinkable. War with China. How shall we here in America, the Rand Corporation funded by the Pentagon, go to war with China? Let us write a document for all to see, including the Chinese. Here is our plan, China. Bear witness to it. By the way, we're definitely thinking about going to war with you, in case you weren't aware of it. So that's how the West operates. Sounds pretty fucking stupid, right? Right? Like, this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying that, like, China's not playing 4D chess. China's just playing chess. While the West is, like, building a pawn. Like, China doesn't operate that way. Because China's not fucking stupid as shit. Read Sun Tzu's Art of War. Right? Do you think Sun Tzu was like, ensure your enemy knows your battle plan? Ensure that your enemy is completely aware of everything you're thinking at all times. Just use lots of weapons in shock and awe, and the enemy will always be defeated. Does that sound like Sun Tzu? That sound like the Art of War? No. No. Like, no. A big reason why you want to have an inner circle. A big reason why you want to have an inner elected organization. Like, the National People's Congress elects an inner circle. So it's like, the National People's Congress itself is like 2,500 people. And then they elect a body that's, I think, 170 people, of which Xi Jinping is the leader of. And a big reason you want to have that is so that, A, you have an agile group, so that if crises arise or if there's something serious going on, you can have some agility and respond to those crises with speed, and then turn around and report that to the larger body and have the larger body see, okay, is that appropriate? Maybe we should critique that, and et cetera, et cetera. But reason number two, big reason number two, is so that it's extremely difficult to get spies in there. And it's extremely difficult to have leaks happen. And the CIA openly complains about it, the way that they openly talk about going to war. And so, and to this point, do you think the West has in the CCP and the elite children who studied and were recruited in Western universities? So, the Chinese don't have this xenophobia in the same way. It is a type, I'm not going to lie to you, it's a type of xenophobia. It's a form of it, but it's not the same. That the American xenophobia is, why would we bother sending anyone to a Chinese school? They have nothing to teach us. We are the best. Our universities are the greatest. No one should ever learn anything or could ever go anywhere else to learn anything. Whereas Easterners are like, no, send your kids to like a Western university, see what they have to say. See what they are talking about. Learn something about them. Learn something about the rest of the world. That travel and experiencing other cultures is itself a form of education. And to go to a Western university and to learn what the Westerners are saying, like, we have this kind of attitude that oh, well, they went to our universities, so they're going to go back and basically be like, America is the greatest country in the world. We should all become like America. And in fact, when you actually talk to these kids, when they go back to China, it's quite the opposite. That they go back and they have like this attitude of like, man, you wouldn't believe what the Americans are doing. Like, you wouldn't believe what they've been talking about. You would and then it's not like the Chinese universities are just allowing these people back into the society unchallenged. So it's not like you get trained in a Western university and you go back and you say, and then everybody goes, oh, that's what they're doing in America. Oh, like the ideas that these people bring back get challenged, and but that's how you actually challenge ideas, is you have people go learn what those ideas in and then bring them home, and then you talk about them, and perhaps somebody comes back and says, hey, this is what America's doing with this kind of thing, what do you guys think? And they go, oh, that is actually very interesting, maybe let's think about that, and perhaps not go all the way with it, but what about this idea and what about that, because they actually want ideas to persist and exist in their culture, because their form of xenophobia is that China's the greatest country in the world, we're the best, you stay over there. Like that's what's so funny about like American xenophobia and American exceptionalism is the idea that we're the greatest country in the world, you're a subspecies, so we're going to come in there and make you like us. America, spreading throughout the world, expansionism, right? That's America. China is, no, we're the greatest country in the world, like we're the greatest people in the world, and we like it that way. So you stay right over there. So it's almost the opposite, that China isn't interacting with the rest of the world in order to make everybody Chinese. They're interacting with the rest of the world to make themselves stronger, and to make themselves bigger, and to make themselves more powerful, because they're the greatest and they don't give a shit about you. Like, yeah, you can also be rich, Afghanistan, but you stay over there. Like, that's their kind of form of xenophobia that they have. So to circle it back about, they're sending their kids to other universities, to European and Western universities, to learn something about Western culture and Western civilization, because they know that they can't afford to be clueless about it. And America thinks it can afford to be clueless about China and Russia and these places. America thinks that it can afford that, and it's wrong. It's desperately, desperately wrong. China also suppressing the Philippines revolutionaries. I mean, that's hardly surprising, though. Honestly, like, China is looking for stability in the region. Like, that. Do not be at all surprised if once America kicks the war off, China just tries to take over the entire region. Like, especially the islands. Like, China wants to blow up all those military bases. China wants to put their own military bases in those areas. China doesn't need revolutionaries trying to fuck with them. Like, it's just the truth. Like, so many times there's just this like theory and reality meet, and when that happens, reality will blow theory apart, right? That there just comes a point where it's like, oh, okay, so we should allow these revolutionaries to take over, and now we've got this fucking wild card off our coast. Nah. And I'm not defending it. I'm not saying it's good or anything. It's just what's real. Like, there's a fucking war on. And America's gonna do it. They're gonna pull the trigger. I love that you guys are talking about like computing. China unseized their means of production during the Deng era. No, I don't think that that's right. Like 60% of the Chinese economy is state-owned. The 40% of the economy that is capitalist owned is largely foreign investment and is largely people coming in, because that was the deal, right? That what we have we're going to keep, but if you want to come in and take advantage of cheaper labor than you've got, then we're going to allow that. That was the deal. So it wasn't that China unseized their means of production, they just allowed more production in. That's what actually happened. Like, and that's why you see the big spike in economic growth, because they literally were building productive capacity. Like, literally. It wasn't financialization, it wasn't bullshit. It was literally factories were opening that were not hitherto there. The reason the capitalists gave to Dangus China is because they appealed to capitalists. I mean, it seemed like a match made in heaven, right? Like, the capitalists wanted their little paper dollars, and the Chinese wanted the means of production. Oh, I disagree with this entirely. Xi Jinping is a revisionist capitalist. Like, what's making you say that, bud? What is making you say that? Because I don't see that in him. I don't see that. I see a guy who is taking the plan that was laid out by the National People's Congress and moving forward on that plan. That's what I see. So I'd be curious to know why you feel that way. Hey there, Snake. How you doing, bud? Why doesn't China completely take over Hong Kong's system? There are thousands of homeless living in cardboard boxes in the city. They're already facing significant resistance. Like, that's already happening. And so to go in and try to actually take it over through force is, like, one of the things to understand about China, and I think that it's important that people really start putting this in the way they think about China, is that the Chinese themselves and the people living in China, and the ruling class of China certainly, think about China in a much longer term, in a much longer scale than we do. That we literally are thinking about the next month, maybe. Like, the business cycle is literally 4 months. An election cycle is only 4 years, right? So structurally built into the system that we have is really just people thinking maybe at most 4 years in advance, and only about their own game, right? How do I position myself? How do I get into this position? How do I make it so that I am positioned so that I can do better for myself? That's the way that America thinks. It's not how China thinks. It's not how the Chinese ruling class thinks. It's not even how the Chinese business class thinks. That China thinks it makes 100-year plans and then breaks them up into 5-year plans. That they have 5-year checkpoints that they go to, and when the 5 years is up, they take a look at it, they critique the 5 years, decide whether or not things worked or didn't, change what they feel needs to be changed, and then make another 5-year plan while heading towards their 100-year plan trajectory. And it can be brought up within that moment whether or not they feel that the 100-year trajectory makes sense, or needs to be added, or needs to be discussed further. So China is actually looking 100 years out, right? Do you think the West is looking 100 years out? Do you think the West is thinking 100 years out? We've only been around for like 150, 200 years. Like, we're not thinking 100 years out. China's been around for 4,000 years. It's thinking 100 years out, and for them that's short term. Like, that's a small scale. Considering the, like, they've got towns that are 1,000 years old. They've got buildings that are thousands of years old in their borders. Towns you can visit that they've basically put like a little dome over and been like, this is going to be this. I can walk you through one right now if you want. And so connecting that idea, and the reason why I'm talking about this idea specifically at length is the hope that it'll really build into your thinking when you start thinking about China. That this is how they think about themselves, and this is how they look structurally. This is what they do. This is how they organize themselves. This is what they do. So that when you ask yourself a question like this, Why doesn't China completely take over the Hong Kong system? There are thousands of homeless living in cardboard boxes in the city. Well, that's the goal. But they don't want to do it tomorrow by going in and shooting everybody. They don't want to enforce a system of oppression. They don't want to have to face an organized resistance movement any more than they already have one, right? That they anticipated and expected a resistance movement when Hong Kong reverted back to Chinese control. They expected and anticipated a resistance movement. That they have moved pieces in Hong Kong to prevent Hong Kong from doing something like declaring its independence, right? Like, if you want to critique what's going on in Hong Kong and critique China, you can critique it along these lines. That they have essentially made it so that the citizens of Hong Kong can never declare their independence, which, again, in the theory space, you can say all day long that, well, the people of Hong Kong should be able to determine their own and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, right. The Americans will put a military base there, and the Chinese are not going to tolerate that. So instead of having a conflict and then needing military troops to go in there to redress the issue, they're just going to make the issue not exist in the first place. And the idea from the Chinese perspective is that over time, the citizens of Hong Kong will simply grow used to being part of China. And that as the generations pass down the line, the citizens of Hong Kong will just grow used to it. And that China and its influence will be able to steadily influence the Hong Kong system until eventually the two will become indistinguishable from one another. That it's a process of integration, and the Chinese are more than willing to wait several centuries to make that happen. Right? Like, they're more than willing to do that. That's how they think. That they're looking at Hong Kong, and the way that the Chinese ruling class and the Chinese Communist Party looks at the protesters of Hong Kong is with a great deal of sympathy, because they feel like they're deluded. That they've been indoctrinated in a system of Western capital, that all they've ever understood and all they know is a system of Western capital, and now they're being influenced by that system of Western capital in order to foment protest against a system they don't really know anything about and they don't really want to be a part of. And so they're looking at these people, and they more or less see it as a young culture throwing a temper tantrum. And that eventually that temper tantrum will abate. Eventually the revolutionary energy and the energy of protest will die down. That the people living in Hong Kong will more or less live a similar life. And that it's the goal of the Chinese ruling class to improve the quality of life in Hong Kong over time. And that people living in Hong Kong will see that and understand that, oh, things are actually improving, and oh, they're building infrastructure, and oh, they're opening up an office, and oh my goodness, now there's people can go in there and get housing. And all of these things steadily over time, steady improvements over time, right? Rather than going in there with cops and flooding the system and cracking heads and all that. They don't need to do that. It's completely unnecessary. It's completely unnecessary. So, eventually Hong Kong will just become another Chinese city. And the history of its ownership by the British, and then the political flipping back over to China, and all of that, 2 centuries out, will just be the history of Hong Kong. And the people living there will just be people who have always lived in China. Yeah, the British owned it at one point. Can you believe it? That little island? That little island right there. They owned this city. Can you believe it? Weird, right? Yeah, it was way worse, apparently. Like, so the Chinese don't feel the need to do that. And incidentally, this is the same story with Taiwan. Like, this is the same story with Taiwan. That the Chinese don't really want to go in there guns blazing. They don't actually want to do that. That what China wants to do is China wants to be able to surround Taiwan, and it wants to be able to send a delegation have the delegation land in Taiwan, have the delegation go to the palace and say, here we are in the glorious land of China. Hello, Governor of Taiwan, province of China. How are you this fine evening in the glorious land of China? And have the Tibetan governor go, I am well in this glorious land of China in the province of Tibet, or the province of Taiwan. And they'll sign a little document. It'll be called something like Chinese-Taiwanese reunification. That's what China wants, right? It doesn't want to go in there and blow the place up. It doesn't want to explode anything. It doesn't want to destroy anybody. It doesn't want to do shock and awe. It doesn't want to do any of that. It will if it has to, but only if it has to. But only if it absolutely has to. And we'll see how that unfolds. But China is more than willing to wait a century to get what it wants. And I think that's like the long-winded way of me getting to that point. It's like, in 100 years, the citizens of Hong Kong will just be Chinese. And the whole protest movement and all that kind of stuff will be gone. Even when I was a racist right-winger, G's story was inspiring. Very nice, Fiddle Ford. And a fine confession. I, too, was once a racist right-winger, if you can believe it. I love it. We got solar panel discussion. Afghanistan 2001, the U.S. cooperated with us. Yes, I'm glad China is stepping up with Russia. I look forward to seeing a multipolar world. It'll be interesting, at least. It'll be that. Snake, good to see you, bud. Based John, thank you. I would be good KGB agent, just need to act dumb. I see the Communist Party coming back to power in Russia after Putin. Looking forward to that. We'll see. Like, we will see. Post-Putin is going to be extremely different. It's going to be extremely interesting to see what happens post-Putin. I actually am really, really interested in that myself. I'm actually kind of glad that I get to be alive to see it, you know, post-Putin. Because, like, who knows, right? Who knows where it's going to go? Who knows what power faction is going to take hold? Who knows who's going to ascend? Like, it's certainly the Ukrainian war empowered the communist faction. That it was the communists that were the ones that were really pounding the drum. So having that kind of energy, but that only really carries through if Russia actually wins the war, which that's not a guarantee. If Xi Jinping wants military bases in the Philippines, then they should support the Maoists there and not donate weapons to suppress them. Again, I just think I don't know enough about the specifics of it, Command Genius, to really talk about it. Like, the Philippines is a small island nation that has military, that has value militarily in the region. Yeah, 5-year plans, 100-year plans. Yeah, unbelievable, right? That really what the West, what China is showing the entire rest of the world is that you should plan. Like, isn't it funny that really what we are looking at is two cultures colliding and two ideas colliding and one emerging victorious? And the ideas that are colliding is it good to have a plan or not? The West stands up and quite literally, let the free market decide, is the idea that came out of the West. Let the free market decide. Near as I can tell, that's no different than saying, let chaos reign, right? So you let chaos reign. And China says, we should probably have a plan. we should probably sit down and drop a plan, drop an idea, drop a thought. So maybe we should sit down and discuss what we think about how the world should move forward. What do you guys think? And these two ideas are colliding into one another, and China is emerging victorious. Because, and it's really fucking ridiculous that it needs to be said out loud, it turns out, guys, it turns out that if you are attempting to organize a project, especially one on the scale of organizing a society of 1 billion plus people, the best way to do it is to have a plan. Holy shit. It's moments like this that that really dawns on me. I really do have these dawning moments, these shocking realization moments about how fucking stupid we are. How fucking stupid the West actually is. Like, I have heard high-level people in the American society, philosophers, academics, economists, politicians, presidents, CEOs, say the best way to organize a society is by letting the market decide. The best way to organize a society is to let chaos reign. And if everybody just does what they think is right for themselves, then everything will work out just fine. Am I being hyperbolic? Am I overstating my case? Anybody want to check me on this? That for the last 30, 40 years, we've been walking around saying precisely this? We don't worry about regulation. Don't worry about government oversight. Government's actually what the problem is. We don't need a plan. We don't need to come together and discuss a larger idea and how to organize ourselves. That's authoritarianism, and we don't want that. We want freedom. We want the freedom to be able to pursue our own individual goals. And if we all individually pursue the goals that we feel are good for us, then everyone will benefit. Turns out, that's a dumb idea. Turns out, the better idea is to have a plan. Is to get people in a room, people you elect and select as citizens, and those people get into a room and they look at one another and they say, all right, what's the plan? Fuck, we're stupid. Fuck, we're stupid. It makes sense, though. The American empire is so young. Like, we're babies. Like, we're so young. So, and really, we're an offshoot of the English empire. It's like a little bit of like the French empire in there, a little bit of the Spanish empire in there, but mainly the British empire, right? So, and it's not like those empires were spreading themselves around based on this idea of like, we need to worry about sustainability and all this. It was all about just expansionism and enriching the crown, right? It was all just about like pursuing like colonialism and genocide and slavery. It was all about that, right? It was all about just expansion into new territory and spreading yourself around. So they weren't worried about like, well, what happens when we finish spreading around and then we're in place? Like, what do we do? And you have basically just like very small groups of people even discussing the consequences of any of this, and then probably nobody even reading that. right? Like our economic courses barely even teach Adam Smith. Like they fucking, and when they do, they do not focus on the stuff that's like, yeah, the invisible hand of the free market's a really bad idea. Landlords are bad. So says Adam Smith. Like, so, I mean, I look at it and I just think to myself, our collapse seems inevitable. Like, it seems like it was unavoidable. That, like, the lessons that societies need to have, that the ideas that societies need to actually have in order to sustain themselves and build themselves and grow, seems like we weren't equipped for it. That the ideas that persist and exist in our society are too stupid, like too juvenile. That you can't actually sustain a project like this. The wind is on China's side now that the world has dropped the dollar. The world is dropping the dollar, and more countries are turning towards China. When the U.S. becomes weak, China will just take over Taiwan. Yeah, there is that. Like, eventually the U.S. is not going to be able to assert itself. And, like, to me, you think about, like, what's the next generation of warfare actually look like? Like, for real, what's the next generation of warfare actually look like? That right now, if you want to be capable on the battlefield, you've got to be using AI. You've got to be using high-level technology. You've got to be using computers. You have to, right? If you go in there with manual ships that you got to, like, load up and then you're just going to get outgunned. You're just going to get outgunned by a vessel that's just going to be like, that has, like, automatic targeting systems. All kinds of crazy shit, right? So you need computers. Well, you think people aren't thinking, like, how do I hack that computer? Well, you think they're not thinking that? So the next generation of warfare isn't actually going to be point, gun, shoot, right? Like, you need a certain degree of that. You need a certain degree of point, gun, shoot, so that you can point, gun, shoot, right? But it's actually just going to be hacking systems, right? And they've been saying it all along, like cybersecurity. Well, what do you think they're talking about? They're talking about getting in and making it so that battlecruiser can't shoot. They're making it so that battlecruiser's engines shut off, right? Or more specifically, that battlecruiser's that it needs to become manual, right? Like, that they have to start relying on the manual way of operating. So they'll be just extremely outgunned. Well, who's in the lead on that? Who's on the lead in these industries, in these tech industries? Is it America? No. Not by a long shot. Right? And why? Because the Chinese economy is better. It's more efficient. It's based on a plan. It's based on an idea. It's not just let the market decide. With all the corruption and all the bullshit that comes with that. Like, the United States is going to roll its ships in, and China's going to hack them. War over. Like, war over. Yeah, and China does not export revolution. That's exactly right. Because that ties in with what I was saying earlier about how China views itself. It just doesn't view itself as needing to spread itself around. It doesn't need you to be Chinese. It's not interested in you being Chinese. Like, the only reason it's actually interested in talking to you is because you have resources it wants. Like, it certainly wants itself to be strong, right? It wants, but China's building walls and shit. Like China's building like great walls, and it calls the technology that it built the Great Firewall of China. Like, so it's got this mindset of like, these are our borders and we're going to protect them and everything's awesome here and you stay out. Make your own shit good. Right? And we're more than happy to try to make your shit good. But we're not going to go in there and cause you fucking problems. We're not interested in that. Unless you are causing us problems. Go to an interview, they ask, where do you see yourself in 5 years? We should ask them this as well. Can you imagine the United States trying to? Yeah. Sounds like a snake eating itself, yeah. Fundraiser idea. $5 to try and argue John about problems with communism without checking a bingo card box. Yeah. Yeah, what a pure shit show. It is a shit show, dude. Like, it is a shit show. Like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, this goes all the way back to what Tinker originally said to get me talking all about China. Which is that China and America are playing the same game. China's not playing a 4D chess game. China's not playing a big, like, some other game. It's the same game. It's just that China's looking at the board. And America's building pieces. And the pieces that America is building, it's not actually building together or in tandem. Right? So it's like... China is playing the game, and it's got one guy sitting at the table. And that one guy that's sitting at the table playing the game has gone through this entire process of being vetted, right? That there's a whole electoral system, thousands of people getting involved in it, millions, hundreds of millions of people voting, right? Applying to be part of the party, voting, involving themselves in the electoral process, getting people elected, millions of people electing people into positions, and then those people are responsible for electing other people who are then in turn responsible for, and the entire time all of those elected officials are themselves going through a process of education and being vetted in socialism and Marxism and these ideas, where they're ascending their own internal hierarchy that they've purposefully put in place specifically to do this very thing, where they've vetted this whole process. And then as people ascend and as people grow in this kind of thing, and as they gain trust from their peers, they continuously go until finally there's a small group of people, and from that small group of people they elect one person to sit at the table to play the game against these capitalists. And you look across the way and you've got 20 guys fist fighting over who gets to profit most from crushing their own piece and eating it. Yeah. Because the Chinese idea is that you should play this game to win, whereas the American idea is that you should play this game to just get fat. That every piece I eat makes me fatter. And that's the point. I'm going to eat that piece, and that'll make me fatter. Like, share, subscribe, you guys. Hit the bell, hit the whistle, share it, clip it, send it around, tell your friends I exist, let people know. If you have $1 jangling around in that pocket, be sure to donate it to the Patreon. Gets you into the Discord. It also helps support your local communist movement. Well, maybe not your local communist movement, but me. And if you like me, and big shout out to my Patreons, for real. You guys are the true champions, honestly. The people who are already my Patreons are the ones that are giving me hope that I might one day be able to do this full time. What a ridiculous and strange world we live in, eh? What a ridiculous and strange world we live in. My advice to everyone out there still listening: get outside, enjoy the sunlight, enjoy the weather. Go have drinks with your friends. Don't talk to them about this. Talk to them about something else. Revel in their own lives. Talk about stupid things. Be dumb. Try to hold someone's hand. Try to give someone a hug. Try to give someone a kiss. Try to find somebody to love. Everyone out there. Everyone out there. Be sure. Be sure to be kind. That if you need to get this out, get it out here. And don't spread it out there. Unless you're actually organizing. Unless you're actually getting people involved. Unless you're actually doing it. For your own mental health, try to enjoy this short, brief period of time that you have. This fleeting moment of life. You're not meant to sit behind a desk. You're not meant to work for these capitalists. You're not meant for any of this. It's more important that you sit under a tree and watch the clouds go by. And methane, exactly the opposite. Definitely talk about the Canadian Commie Club. Bring your friends. Tell more people. All right, guys, I'm going to close it down. A little early. Oh. That is good news, Cotton. That is really good news. That's something worth celebrating. Celebrate with your coworker. And always remember, everyone, you are a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Revolt. Rebel. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.